everybody, welcome to Sesh, the first student-led podcast from UNCW's Department of Communication Studies. We are here from Class Com 395, Action Sports, with the Professor Norb Garrett. Here on Sesh, we spotlight leaders and legends of the action sports industry, one conversation at a time. My name is Christina Laeta, and I am here with my co-host, Isabel Elmore.
Thank you, Christina. I'm happy to be here. Last week, we sat down with Mr. Don Meek. For our episode today, we will be hosting Circe Wallace. Circe is a former professional athlete turned sports executive, cultural strategist, and advocate for athletes who refuse to fit the mold. Circe serves as executive VP for action sports, women's sports, and athletics at the team. We are thrilled to have you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Circe.
Thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm. So to start off, we just wanted to ask for you to tell us a little bit about yourself, just to give our viewers a little bit of background information.
Okay. Well, I got my start in the Pac Northwest, and I was a bit of a skate rat snowboarder who fell in love with board sports at an early age. I think in a lot of ways really set me on my life trajectory, participating in those kind of community activities. I came from really lovely hippie parents. I did a lot of back and forth. They were very bohemian. They moved a lot. They were divorced, so I had two families. But snowboarding and skateboarding really gave me community. So I really early on fell in love with those things, and that really kind of led me to where I am today. I'm a mother of two daughters. I have a phenomenal adult child who is just finishing her master's degree. She played soccer through college, and then I have a 13-year-old ballerina.
Oh, that's awesome.
I am happily married to Chaz Smith and live in Cardiff by the Sea, California. And now I surf more than I skate or snowboard. It is my daily respite from the craziness of this world. And yeah, what else can I tell you? I'm a 20 plus year exec at Wasserman. My day-to-day is very layered. And I'm sure we'll get into that with some more specific questions.
Of course. So one of the first questions that we have for you is, can you tell us a little bit about the family, how you got involved with them, and just a little bit more on how you were able to rise to your current role?
I mean, well, I essentially co-founded the family.
Yeah.
So, I had gotten injured. This story is hard to tell because I've told it so many times, but I think it gives good kind of foundation for how I ended up here. I was a professional snowboarder for Ride Snowboards. This was the 90s. Ride was in the process of being acquired by K2. I got injured while on a shoot not competing, but for a photo shoot for Ride. I tore my ACL. And Ride tried to terminate my contract, or they terminated my contract. And so I found a lawyer in Seattle, which is where I lived at the time, and she took my case on a contingency, which most of you know means I didn't have to put any money up front. I just had to give her a lot if I won. And she really made me kind of write my own case, which was kind of fun. Like, she had me do all of my timeline and like really kind of did all of my, the deep dive into kind of like the basis for the case of wrongful termination. And so through that process, she kind of mentored me. I ended up winning that case in arbitration. But through that process, really realized like that there wasn't anyone in my world of board sports like doing that kind of work in advocating or advocacy for the athlete. Obviously, I'd seen Jerry Maguire and was like, how come no one's doing this in our world? So I had kind of started thinking, and this was my first ACL, like what I wanted to do next as a career. I continued to have a professional career for a few more years, and then I had written a business plan for essentially what the family was, and then got brought in to the family, at the very beginning, early days. And then at that point, I was coming out of my I had torn another ACL and was coming out of my snowboarding career, with a basis of knowledge. I'd say I wasn't maybe the best snowboarder in the world. Like I didn't go to the Olympics. I won a lot of regional events. I won a world championship in Japan, but I wasn't like, a top of the heap competitively. I actually hated competing. But I was a really good negotiator. I
Hmm.
just had like this weird intrinsic kind of desire to be a little bit combative. I really liked kind of, and I think that would go back to my bohemian upbringing where my parents were very lefty and like, always, like be a person of the people and look out for others kind of um uh ethos. And so I also always kind of managed my boyfriends.
Hmm. Of
They always
course.
had, yeah, they had their own careers. And I had a boyfriend, Jamie Lynn, who went on to be a huge snowboarding superstar. And I kind of managed his career. Like he was super creative, really talented artist, but I would help him put his resume together and his sponsor me video. And so I kind of always had this management.
Hmm.
I was the manager agent archetype from a very early age. And so I think that suited me in transition. And I had always really approached my snowboarding career like a business. I always pictured myself a businesswoman. And, because I didn't have a traditional college experience, I had a really great snowboarding career. Instead, I did do everything I could to kind of glean like marketing experience and all of the things from the business lens that was interesting to me. And so when I did come on board with the family, I kind of came with a bit of an education and a lot of relationships. So from like recruiting talent and then helping on PR and comms and knowing everyone at all the magazines or all the film crews, like I just already had kind of a unique foundation that lent itself to that career.
Hmm. I find it super interesting that you were like one of the main people on the forefront of having people advocate for the athletes that they were sponsoring or representing. Because even now within the music industry, like I'm a huge fan of Amy Winehouse, and you see like old videos of her on stage when she was obviously very strung out, drunk, like. And I was thinking like, what kind of manager would put someone on stage and kind of like exploit the hell out of them when they're in such a horrible place? So people forget, but it really is important to have someone that's looking out for you in your best interest. And that's not just when it comes to music, it is athletes as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think yeah, the Amy Winehouse analogy is so interesting because, like, what an incredible, transcendent talent who, but you look back at Elvis, he had
Mm-hmm.
all his money stolen. I mean, there is like, it's very interesting how, like, the celebrity, super talented, kind of ethereal talents oftentimes don't have good management sense and are very vulnerable to people exploiting them. And so for me, I always felt like I gave it like the purpose in that was really important and having an ethical foundation for the little guy or girl against the big corporation was what really drove me and kind of inspired me to work with the individuals versus just like taking a marketing position and working for one of the big guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
I love that.
incredible.
So in our class, Professor NG or Norb Garrett talked about how action sports athletes shifted to the mainstream once their fame was powerful enough to sell products. So you and the family were the first talent agency to really accelerate the careers of talent like Travis Pastrana and Lizzie Vaughn and others like that. What was your role in that, and what are some of the most dramatic success stories that you can share with us today?
Well, it was an interesting time because it was like these board sports or whatever you want to call action sports. It's like a hard name for me to ever really wrap my head around. But the thing that's so unique about those things is they're not just sport, right? There's elements of creativity or uniqueness that is celebrated, which I think is what makes them so great. And so much of that is centered around personality and the opportunity, and whether it's inventing a trick or, how you present yourself to the public is what makes up the essence of a top talent. And I think I always had like a really good sense of, uh, and I say, sometimes I say I know how to pick a pony, which isn't maybe the best, most respectful reference. But in saying that, I mean that I kind of always had a sense of who I knew was going to go on, and with some help could be a transcendent talent. So I think, that was intrinsic. I don't think that was learned. That was just like observational, right? Like seeing, and I guess having an understanding of what it takes to be great. I think like going back to like key moments, I mean, of course, there's things like Olympic inclusion, which at the time I hated in 90, what was it, 94? It was either 94 or 98. I can't remember. I'm old. Um, where, the opportunities for global visibility and growth of these sports became, what we now call mainstream. Um, and I think what is interesting, what continues to be interesting, and which is so fun about the action sports space is that it's not just sport. It is cultural, it is lifestyle, it is community, and that those mainstream moments like the Olympics or I don't know if I think back, the 900 or Carrie Hart doing the first backflip on a motorcycle, like those kind of things, which are those really big moments that then all of a sudden end up on Sports Center, or the kind of things that are those breakthrough things, Kelly Slater getting a perfect 10, or uh, there's a ton of them. There's a ton of those, Danny Way jumping out of a helicopter into a vert ramp, or, jumping the Great Wall of China. I think we continue to still have those kind of spectacle moments that allow for people who might not ever strap on a snowboard or a skateboard or paddle out, but to feel that, and it is outside of the traditional field of play.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that is, and I think that the collective, there are still relatively small communities that make up a larger community of action sports enthusiasts. But I think it's the uniqueness and the nuances of those sports that you actually, and again, I'm calling them sports, but I think they're more than that, that allow for you to feel like you're a part of something and you understand the complexity, or the rules of engagement.
I really like that. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I literally just did a presentation in my last class. We had to talk about like a career path that we want to go on. And I was talking about working in action sports. And I was trying to say that like, if I wanted to go into like, hockey, football, baseball, obviously those people, the professionals, like that is their identity. But there's just so much personality that goes into like decorating your snowboard, like getting a certain type of surfboard that's designed just for you. So much of action sports is who you are and how you represent yourself. And it becomes
Yeah.
like such an identity. It's not just a sport, it really is your entire personality into like the action that you're taking.
Agreed. And I think it's interesting too, where there are, in our sports, there's opportunity for self-expression that are so much more unique. And I don't know, like, I loved watching Alyssa Liu or whatever,
Yeah.
the ice skater
Yes.
in the Olympics. And I don't care about ice skating. Usually it's kind of like, oh, that's a spectacle. But just like knowing like that she came out of kind of a break and then came back and found the joy, and that she did like unique tricks that no one else can do, and she was allowed to express herself through the way that she did her hair and all that, like that felt like very representative of what works in our world. And she was like such an outlier, disruptor,
Hmm.
in her space of ice skating, that it was just like, the youth are always kind of trying to push the limits, and the ones that can do that not only in how they express themselves, but how they express themselves on the field of play in reaching their potential of their athleticism is like such a really cool and unique sweet spot because, a hockey player, like, yeah, they have their own style or whatever, or their little thing that they do, but it's way more consistent
Hmm.
in like what is required to win. And again, that's a team sport, but the individualistic pursuit, and particularly in these spaces of surfing, skating, and snowboarding, I would say, are very much like you don't have to win everything to have a career. You can just be a really killer content creator. And we are seeing a little bit of that, like Olivia, is it Dunn or Nunn? I can never remember, but the
Done.
collegiate gymnastics star
Yeah.
who then became a content creator and then post graduation. It's not like she's competing in the Olympics, but she's built an empire, right? From her own, creator platform. And now, now we're seeing more of that. And I think that's what's cool. Like in most traditional sports, you have to win. That
Hmm.
is
Yeah.
like the singular definition of success. Action sports is so much more varied. There's a full spectrum of opportunity that I think is so much fun. And it gives those kids who don't conform into, a traditional environment in the workplace or otherwise, opportunities to participate in areas that they feel super passionate about. And there are opportunities, as you suggested. It's Christine, yeah?
Christina, yeah.
Christina,
Hmm.
yeah, where you were suggesting like thinking about, just even working in the space that has more opportunity for creativity and outside the box thinking.
Even with like when I think of hockey, like because I did an internship for the hockey team here, like when it comes to hockey, like a lot of their fashion could be centered around the fact that, it's a cold weather sort of sport. Or when you look at
Right.
basketball, like a lot of their fashion comes from like black culture here in America. But like action
Mhm.
sports just stands out so much because it's just so personality driven. So like even
Yeah.
if someone was to wear a suit and tie and get on a skateboard, like that would be their thing. They'd be like the dude that wears a suit and tie. Like that's their personality.
I mean, I feel like Dylan Ryder kind of did that,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Hmm.
his DKNY shoot or whatever. But yeah, I think that kind of personal identity is celebrated in a way. I will say that as these sports age, like even in skateboarding, I'm perpetually frustrated by skateboarding culture because there's all these old heads
Yeah.
in these positions at brands that don't understand the youth and are holding on to they're like the gatekeepers holding on for dear life to hold on to like their core lord kind of mentality, which I think is very insular, very limiting. And I think that, fortunately, we're finally getting to a place where, the landscape's changed so much. Like you guys are young, you're living in this very interesting time. In my lifetime, there was the age of the cell phone. I grew up without a cell phone.
Hmm.
I grew up, I had a pager. I grew up, without the internet. The internet didn't really become mass adopted until, I was in my late teens, early 20s. And
Hmm.
so, you know, we were very early content creators. Like we kind of wrote the playbook in action sports because we weren't big enough to be on ESPN. And so we'd go stack our clips on VHS, and those would be, that was, the last years of my career were solely, getting a video part. You'd spend a year or two out there with a whole film crew and a huge camera, stacking clips, and then really, you hope that you had a large part the annual video release uh, of the season. So I think now, everything's sped up.
Hmm.
It's like, and there's huge advantages for those in action sports to take, sovereignty or ownership over their own careers if they're really willing to lean into that kind of content creation. But I think that there's a fine line of like, we live in the attention economy now.
Yeah.
And so like you even see like I don't even know like do that many people even watch the Olympics? I don't know. They're on YouTube,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? And so I think we're in this like transition period, and I don't really know how it's all going to shake out, but I think that that's partly why the core lords are holding on for dear life because they don't want to lose the essence of what makes these things special. But also we have to modernize. We have to understand what the kids want and what is resonating with the youth and make sure that we understand that because that is what really matters. It's like, yeah, we can go hold on and sit around and talk about the past and like I'm one of those people, I was just talking to my husband, like I'm always moving forward. I don't spend a lot of time sitting around thinking about, I'm busy. I'm
Yeah.
thinking about, what kind of deal am I trying to create or what kind of opportunity exists for my clients. And that is a forward moving motion, always. It's always what's next. And I just think that we're in a weird place because there's been so much market contraction. There's been a ton of homogenization. We had like the peak years of the industry, where I don't know, Quicksilver was, valued at over $1 billion at one point, and then it went bankrupt. And now uh, we have to kind of get back to cottage industries and not be so worried about building things at scale and be more community oriented and understand what the kids want and the kids are resonating to and let them lead, in my opinion, as to what's next, because you're the ones that are actually consuming. And
Yeah.
whether
Yeah.
that's content or products, and we need to listen to you more than thinking we know and you have to conform to how it used to be because those are the rules of engagement.
I think it's hard. I'm not a big fan of change. So like I kind of get where they're coming from. Like they want to hold on to it, but I feel like change is necessary for things to get better, for things to grow. You have to change. So like I think that, like you said, like figuring out what the youth want is what is going to get you that coverage and grow that industry for you. And so you have to kind of take a step back and be like, this is what worked before, but maybe we can shift it in a different way and figure out maybe still incorporate some of that old stuff, but add some new stuff in so that we get these engagement from the youth. So
Yeah, I think it's like a balance, right? Of helping the kids understand the origin stories or the really early innovators. And a lot of them are very problematic, by the way.
Yeah.
So it's like, what is the next gen? And how do we make sure that you all understand what we value about these like first, I'm going to call them first generation sports
Mhm.
yeah,
because although the Hawaiians were surfing hundreds of years ago, the modern consumer movement is within my lifetime, right?
yeah,
Um, and so how do you be curious enough as the youth about what, where it all came from and what are the tenets of those, like in surfing, the rules are really like, how do you behave in the lineup?
Yeah.
yeah,
Right? Like, how do you be respectful and not drop in on people or back paddle or all those things, those rules are there for a reason. And that's like safety and respect and those things. So how do you, as a youth, be curious about those things? Like, and using skateboarding as an example, like I'm in the business. I go watch what my new client Ginwoo does
Mhm.
and I have no idea, like the physics of the trick or what is he like. I have to watch it in slow-mo to even try to dissect what it is that he actually just did. And so I think that's what makes skateboarding cool is like you have to kind of be in the know, but you can still be a novice and enjoy, cruising around on a penny
Mhm.
skateboard or, learning how to ollie. Like that is the whole spectrum of the sport. And there's a market segment that, the physics and the nuances of like how you dress or what's important. Like this client of mine, Ginwoo, who is 16 and like gets a lot of criticism for like how he dresses, which is totally ridiculous.
Mhm.
Like he dresses uniquely. He's not conforming to what these old heads or core lords think is cool. He's doing what he thinks is cool, which from my perspective, and a lot of it helps that I have a 13-year-old, but it's like I think that's cool. Like
Yeah.
I think what, him wearing, full knee-high socks is his own look, which it defines his individualism, which is exactly why we love skateboarding, because it allows for that kind of freedom of expression. And that anyone who is trying to make judgment or think that they don't like his fashion because it doesn't conform to what the skateboarding standard is completely missing the point. And I think that there's still a gap between people in positions at brands and what's actually happening, but it's all coming to light, and I think it'll all work itself out in the wash, because you're going to get younger people into these positions who understand you.
There's like a trend on TikTok where people will be like, oh, it's like the cool girl aesthetic. And I'm like, I don't think I've ever met someone who's like trying to dress cool or trying to be cool. Like, I don't think I've ever considered one of those kids to be cool. Like, I think
Yeah.
cool people, like my Aunt Tony, for example, like she's just like a salt of the earth human being. And I think she's just like the coolest person I've ever met. You know, she's not
Yeah.
like wearing cool shades and like stepping out in like Louis Vuitton shoes, but like she's the coolest person I know just because she's herself. Or like, you know, there are certain kids that like I grew up going to school with, and I was always into like emo music and emo bands, and I was always like kind of shy about it because my friends like weren't into that stuff. But there was this girl in my grade who was like always showing up with like her black eyeliner on. She had pitch black hair, you know, she was wearing her little choker with like an MCR t-shirt, and I was like, that's cool. Like, why is it like, why do you have to fit in with everyone else to be like, you can't try to be cool. You could be a totally normal person and be the coolest person someone met. But like, I think like you were saying, like the idea of like going out of your way to like fit into a standard when it's not unique to yourself, like then you're not being cool. But like you could dress however you want and be an authentic person, and that's like way more admirable than being like normal.
I totally agree. And I was that kid. I was that 14-year-old who was totally awkward, skateboarder, cut my hair, dyed my hair black, black eyeliner. And I felt like I did not fit in, but I felt more comfortable like that. And then I found my community. And I think that's what's missing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, you know, you were attracted to emo music because it resonated with you in that moment of your life. And of course, it's just one chapter, right? But it's, from my perspective, the kids that are comfortable enough in their authentic selves, even knowing it is a spectrum. It's going to change. What are you wearing, a Megadeth
Yeah, I am.
shirt now? So yeah, you went
Yeah.
from emo to Megadeth, right?
Yeah.
So I think that that's, again, all of the variables that allow, for us to find our unique expression. And that's what I think is so cool about action sports. And that I think, we need to continue to celebrate the kids who aren't just trying to be different for attention, but actually really are different. And that's just who they are. I also have a client, Jagger Eaton, who is, who has been, challenged his whole career because he's just a good old boy and he just likes skateboarding and he likes it like a sport and he wanted to win the Olympics. And
Hmm.
a lot of people think that that's not cool in skateboarding. At the end of the day, like, he's a two-time medalist, going into LA, just won Tampa Pro, and he's just doing it his way. But the skateboarding, dudes are still like refraining from engaging in a respectful way. And I just think it's just ridiculous.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Oh,
I was
I
just gonna
keep
say, I feel
talking.
like if you start to act like that to a degree, you're gonna like push those people further away. They're gonna feel like they're not included in this community because you're just saying, oh, you're not doing it how I want you to be. So now you can't even do it at all. And I feel like that's losing the point of what action sports is about, because it's about being yourself and being unique to yourself. So the further you push them away from that, the more they're gonna be like, so why would I even try to be in your community if you're not gonna accept me for who I authentically am?
Isabel, you're just spitting facts.
Hmm. I
That's exactly
remember
it.
I was in the dining hall once and I had seen Pantera with my boyfriend and my dad. And I got a shirt and I was in the dining hall and this old man was like, "That must be your dad's shirt." And I was like, "It's Pantera." Like it's not like I'm like wearing a shirt of like this niche hardcore band that like 3 people listen to on Spotify. I'm like, "It's Pantera." Like you meet so many people that are like so gatekeepy about like, "Oh, surfing." I'm like, everybody can go surf if they really want. Like it's not
Yep.
like this like very niche thing anymore. Like and action sports are the same way. Like we see skateboarding in the Olympics. Like you can't really gatekeep an Olympic sport. It's the same way. Like when someone's like, "Oh, I'm different." Like I listen to like Metallica. I'm like, Metallica is like one of the most successful bands on the planet. Like you're actually not cool. Like, like that gatekeepism. I'm like, it's non-existent anymore. You can't
Yeah, and
gatekeep
it's like,
things.
why even take ownership over that? Like, just to have fun and enjoy people for their own individualism. I just think that it's like so important. I think that you guys, as the youth, have done a really good job in helping us understand like how to be more accepting of individualism. And I think there's a fine line between like individualism being a bad thing. I think that's what got us Trumpism,
Yeah.
which is like just me, it's entitlement.
Hmm.
But I think acceptance of other people and other cultures and other personality types and even spectrum disorders, right? Which I don't even want to call disorders because honestly, some of the most talented, amazing humans I know are on the spectrum, right? The most, I mean, honestly, they're like savants,
Hmm.
or exceptional at certain things because they have a different perspective. Their brain has a couple extra neurons firing,
Hmm.
And I think that, my hope is that, with the death of the entitlement that comes with all of the challenges that we're encountering that are going to require us to be more community oriented. There will be more acceptance of those things, of whatever it is, LGBTQ or even your belief system, religion, like language, all of those things that if we can take a step back and start to look at what are the things that are important to us and how we view the world and what is cool or what isn't cool and stop being so judgy all the
Hmm.
time. I think that's also like what has contributed to the rise of celebrity or Kardashian culture, which is just so vapid and
Hmm.
lame and boring.
I
Like
agree.
everyone looking the same, you
Hmm.
know?
So, to start getting into other questions that we have, I really enjoyed that conversation. I
Yeah,
feel
that was good.
seen. That was awesome. So you said, or not you said, but I wanted to ask you, how much did events like the X Games, Do Tour, and now the Olympics, how do they help showcase your athletes and drive their popularity? Because obviously we're talking about gatekeep culture, and there are certain athletes that kind of want to keep that to themselves, but also like you can't resist like an Olympic invitation. So how do you think that those sort of organizations showcase your athletes but remain like it keeps them authentic, if that makes sense? Sorry, I'm rambling.
I don't know that they do.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I think all of those properties are struggling to find their sweet spot
Mm-hmm.
in this transition that we're seeing right now. I would say most of the action sports in general are relatively distressed. A lot of that is because, um, you can go buy a soft top at Costco.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need a signature product to go kick around on a skateboard. Um, and I think that those kind of let's call them culture signals or whatever are different now and have been a little bit more homogenized. I also think that goes back to why a lot of the core really is holding on for dear life to those things because it has gotten lost on some level with the homogenization of our cultures and the rise of Amazon products, where you're not going into the skate shop or the surf shop anymore and interacting with your community in the same way that you used to because they don't exist. The mom and paws are gone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I think, you saw X Games probably just launched their X Games League concept, which
Mm-hmm.
is, an effort and hopefully a good one. to expand on, the opportunity to build community and enthusiasm for a certain team, which creates a little more like layered interest across multi-sport and across multi-personalities. And then you've got things like, Natural Selection Tour, which I co-founded, which is like really using Mother Nature as a central character, which allows for, we always say we're like to bring the outdoors into your living room, kind of elements where, the outdoor adventure aspect is really central around what we're trying to do. And then you go out from there, and whether that's, CPG or consumer packaged goods, or hard good products or whatever those things are, that you really need to drive the business. I think we're really in a recalibration, of really identifying like who are the enthusiasts that are willing to engage and watch and consume the content as well as the products. And they're, they are little cottage industries. I think we need to stop trying to be these, there's always those blue chip brands, the Samsungs of the world that you hope come in and want to make a meaningful investment in the space to support, the skateboard brands are struggling, the board shapers are struggling. It's not, and we're seeing that across all kinds of industries. We're just here talking about action sports today, and so that's, one of the challenges that we're confronted with as an industry.
Moving into like the family and it being sold. So when the family was sold to Wasserman, I don't know if I said that right, I'm sorry. How did that change the company and what's happening now with the rebrand of the company?
Okay. So, I mean, the acquisition by Wasserman of the family really put us on a trajectory. I think again, action sports is relatively small in this in the scope of sport, right? And with Casey's support, we really were able to invest in the space and build what I think is the premier agency in all of sports in the world. Um, I think the rebrand has been, relatively well publicized. I'd rather not
Mm-hmm.
get into that today, other than that, I really love the company that I work for. I'm very happy to be there. I feel like very supported as a woman executive within the organization, which has been an incredible journey, and I'm very happy with the people that I work with and the work that we're doing.
Mm-hmm. So, what does a day as the executive VP of Action Sports Olympics and Women's Sports at the team look like for you?
Well, I kind of have a small team. I straddle different divisions, so it's super dynamic. I'm very reactive. I have a lot of like, I'm a creative deal maker, and I've just had to be. The business transaction sizes of the kind of deals that I'm doing, I'm not doing super contracts like the NBA that are $200 million deals. Um, so it's a much more kind of bespoke approach to like a specific talent and like what do they want and what kind of opportunities might exist for them. And then it's typically a long game. A lot of it is outreach, a lot of it is like establishing rapport with the talent and really identifying, okay, here's the brands that you want to work with, but what are the things that we need to do to actually get those brands to engage? And then once we get them engaged, what kind of creative content deliverables or opportunity do we have to express yourself? One of my clients, Deshaun Jordan, is like one of the best content creators I know. He, is like a small boutique agency all in his own. He writes his own music and he can overlay his own music on his content for Minute Maid, where, he likes to drink juice and, those kind of things, which is like really working with the talent to extract like what is super important to them, where do they find joy and expression, and then how can we build brand around that with partners. And then, a lot of it also is just very strategic, like my role around On the women's sports and Olympic side, I'm working with, some basketball players. I'm helping mentor junior agents in the space. And then I get to learn something new. Like I've always loved basketball, and that's like, I'm a 54-year-old woman who's been in this business for almost 30 years, and I'm just getting to stretch myself and learn from others, including Lindsay Collis, who is kind of the lead of that group in ways that are expanding my knowledge base and relationships. And that's very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
So earlier you mentioned that you were good at negotiating. So negotiating can be uncomfortable for a lot of people. So what tips would you give us college age students about negotiating and how to go about it?
Oh, this is a fun one because I helped my daughter just negotiate her first job out of college.
That's
So,
awesome.
That's great.
I mean, I think, this is what I tell everyone, including my clients. Like, I am just an information gatherer. That's literally what I do. I go find opportunities or ask if there is an opportunity, and then help filter that information so that my clients or kid can make an informed decision.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the most important thing for you in thinking about how you might want to approach a negotiation is one, being curious. It's super important to understand, like when you're negotiating and whether that's from an employer or a brand, depending on, what it is that you're negotiating, um, what's important to the entity that you're negotiating with. Because once you understand that, you can then negotiate from a place of strength
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
because you know what they want. And so then you can position yourself in a way that you understand that you've listened to them. And whether that's through your own research or conversation, in your initial interview, you should be asking those kinds of questions. Like, what are the things that are important to you? And also, what are the things that are important to them? So that when you come back um, to it, you can come from a position of understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's one thing. I think also it's like not being afraid to ask. My daughter got an initial job offer, and it was decent, but she was like, should I ask for more? I was like, why not? They're not going to pull the offer.
Mm-hmm.
And she would get a little nervous about that. And I'm like, what's the worst that can happen? Let's unpack it for a minute. Like what? They say no?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
literally the worst thing that can happen. So I think it's just, kind of thinking about, like, first and foremost, going into it with an understanding of like what's important to you while gathering information in the process, and then making sure that you're not afraid to kind of have, you should always go into a negotiation knowing like what your floor and your ceiling
Yeah.
is, right? Like, and that doesn't have to be just monetary. It's also, can you work remote? And, is that something that they're open to? What are the benefits, and can you ask for more of something? So those are the kind of things that I think. It's also like thinking about those other things that aren't just like, if I'm negotiating with a brand, it's like, is there resources for a media buy to support the content, to spend against it if we create something cool? It's not just what kind of cash you're putting in the talent's pocket, it's also what kind of marketing dollars. Will you put them in a global campaign? What kind of value and kind of exchange opportunities exist that then make up a holistic value of something? And so I think you don't ever want to just look at it just like cash compensation. You also want to think about like quality of life, or what are the other things that are going to help, build your profile or give you more marketing power or greater visibility or opportunities with other brands.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So to kind of go off of that, because I feel like it's relevant to our previous conversation, we have a quote from you that states, "I've just never wanted to be comfortable or for things to be easy. It's always about how far you can push it." So obviously, like we were saying, negotiating can be uncomfortable, but just in general, how has this mindset benefited you throughout your career, and how important is it to be uncomfortable and push yourself in life?
I mean, I think, listen, life is uncomfortable.
Mhm.
Like, we're all going to experience in our lifetimes horrible tragedies. And, if according to God's plan, the death of your parents, right? Like, the life is uncomfortable. It's just hard. And I think that the idea that it's not going to be is unrealistic. And I think if you can harness that reality and use it to your advantage and not being afraid of conflict and not being afraid to be solutions oriented and resolving said conflicts, I think you just get farther in life.
Mhm.
Like full stop. You're never going to not have it, right? You're never going to not have moments of conflict, and whether that's an issue with a landlord or your cell phone company because you're mad because they overcharged you and you had to wait online for 30 minutes to get a human being. Like these are all things that are going to happen, and if you can approach them from a place of being clear in finding an open to solution, then I just think that you get a lot farther. And that is a skill that will lend itself to a successful life in work and relationships.
Mhm.
And I think honesty, directness, like I've oftentimes gotten a lot of criticism. Like I constantly hear people, oh, I used to be scared of you, or you're so scary, or, you're a bitch, or whatever, those kind of, and my reaction to that is like that's just not true. I'm just a very direct person. Like if you have an issue with me, I'm quite confident that if we were willing to get in a room, we could resolve that. And
Mhm.
I will, I'm perfectly capable of apologizing if I was out of line or if I did something that upset you. And in retrospect, I really, really, really like personal accountability.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to get that, and years of therapy. And I remember I had a therapist once who was just like, "You're always late, and you always have an excuse for being late." And she's like, "I would like to use this as an opportunity for better personal accountability in all aspects of your life. Let's look at this as a small example of how you can be better." And that was like life changing for me. It was just like I was constantly making excuses. I've always had a hard time being on time. But after that, it was like, oh, wow, like I'm inconveniencing someone else and I need to take responsibility for that. And once I did that, it changed my relationship with time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so I think, especially for you kids coming out of college, like just being able to admit when you're wrong and say you're sorry is such a huge, I mean, I make mistakes all the time. And I'm telling you, it's so much easier to resolve those things when you can say, you know what, you're right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I screwed up here. And what can I do to fix it? Or how about this? And I have an idea of how I can make this right. And that just goes a really long way.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
think for myself, I get scared in conflict. It's just like result of trauma and stuff. Like I am a chronic people pleaser and I'm trying to work on that. So even going
Yeah.
back to like negotiating and stuff like that, I get so scared. I'm like, I don't want to inconvenience this person and then they're not having a good day and then like it spirals. Like I think about other people more than myself. But I feel like I've got to start learning like it's okay to stand up for myself too and stuff. And I liked your quote about, never wanting to be comfortable because I feel like a lot of people live in comfortability. I am guilty of that myself. Like we have our routine, we want to be comfortable, but I feel like you learn so much more when you're not comfortable, when you step across that line. But it's so hard to learn sometimes. And I'm trying to work on that because I live in comfortability a lot and I'm scared to like fail or scared to like do all this stuff. And it's kind of like when you told your daughter, like, what's the worst they can say is no. My parents tell me that all the time. They're like, just go for it. Like the worst you can do, they can say is no, or like it just doesn't work out, but you can find something else. And I'm like, but you just don't get it. Like I'm just scared to get that no or just for it not to work out because then where am I going to be? Like I just think of all the worst possible outcomes that can come instead of being like, there's going to be something better that's going to come along even if you do fail. It's okay. Keep going. So I like what you said. That
And
was
you find
inspiring.
I
that
mean,
like most people who won't admit that they're wrong ever are like literally the most unbearable people you'll ever meet
yes,
in real life. So
I
like
know.
when I can admit when
I
I'm
agree.
wrong, like I will come up and be like totally truthful, like that was pretty rude of me, like I shouldn't have
Yeah.
done that. But like every person I've ever met that's like, no, I did this because of this and blah, 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 and is like incredibly like not capable of saying sorry. I'm like, that person's annoying and I wouldn't want anything to do with them anyways. Like, I would rather be the type of person that admits my mistakes because I tried than someone who like won't admit their mistakes and is totally okay with being like viewed as an asshole because they won't admit that they're wrong.
Yeah.
And it really diffuses. Oftentimes, if you can just say, you know what, stop, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
I screwed up. I'm sorry. Can we move forward now? Like, then it's just like, okay. Like, it's just, I like to say that success is a collection of failure.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Like, if you look at skateboarding, how many times do those kids break themselves off learning a new trick?
Mm-hmm.
It's like hours and hours, hundreds of hours on hard concrete to nail something. And I think that's just a really good analogy for life. It's just like anything. Like if you put in your 10,000 hours, you're gonna win
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
eventually.
I remember going to Disney when I was young and I fell and scraped my knee open and I was wailing, like crying my eyes out. And my dad, like he's big into surfing, skating, whatever. And he was like, you just scraped your knee. Like it's going to be okay. He let me wallow and I was like all upset and whatever. And then like it kind of creates this fear for like the rest of your life. Like you're scared to fall. You're scared to scrape your knee. But then in October, I went to a concert. I was in a pit and I got knocked over. Like my knee got like all destroyed. And I was thinking about it. I was like, I really did not react to like how poorly that felt because I was just like, damn, it happens, you know? So there are certain
Right.
things in life that like seem so much more anxiety inducing because like maybe you had one wrong experience doing that. But like if you only had one wrong experience, like how many times will you have a good experience? You know, yeah, I
Yeah.
scraped my knee, but I was in a pit. I had a good time. So like you can really change your perception of things if you just try them out multiple times. And yeah, like you might fall, but like you might totally just like have a new outlook on things. Sometimes it's worth it.
Yeah, think about the positives instead of the negatives, like think about all the things that can come good instead of the one thing that went wrong. I think that can really change how you see things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that's a pattern thing. And I've dealt this with my own kids where it's just like life is pretty good and then something bad happens and then you just kind of fixate on it or you have a weakness and you get stuck on it. And I think it is, and not to be cliche, but like the best thing that you can do in those kind of situations is reframe what is going right in your life,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because more oftentimes than not, there's more good things happening than the
Yeah.
one bad thing happening. And I even have to do that. Like I got fired by a client that I had really, really invested in, and he ended up going to a competitor who was just not a good person. And I was so sick about it for weeks. Like I would wake up and not in the middle of the night and go, what did I do wrong? And I still in my middle age, there are times where you get that little bit of heartbreak or something horrible happens. My mom died this year. Like it was horrible. It was
Mm-hmm.
absolutely, she had dementia for years. It was really, really, really challenging. But also there's just like so much beauty in my life. And the more that I can go back to all of the abundance, I think because we live in it's like we don't know. It's the best time ever probably to be alive,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
right? Where you want Thai food tonight, you get yourself some Thai food. You want
Mm-hmm.
to sleep in on a Sunday and not have to work. You guys get to indulge in the experience of education. Like there's so much abundance and we have so much beauty in our lives. And I think the more, time that we spend acknowledging that and indulging in that, it makes it a lot easier for when those times of conflict or despair to recover
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
because it happens to all of us. And I
Yeah.
think it's how you navigate that that ultimately determines your happiness.
Yeah. That's so true. I have a bad habit of living in the negatives instead of focusing on all the positives. And so I've tried to start like shifting my brain to be like, it's over, it's done. Look at all the good that's in your life right now and just focus on that. But
Yeah, you have to remember that it's just going to be, that's just going to, bad things are going to happen
yeah.
all the time. But spending time worrying about them or reflecting on it too much takes away from all of the good.
Yeah, and it
so
only hurts you at the end of the day. Like, it really doesn't hurt anyone else but yourself. So don't steal your own happiness at that point.
yeah, I mean, you guys, you guys got to live in this weird, like, doom scrolling
Yeah.
land.
Yeah,
It's like,
that's true.
and even like, my girls, like, who are so beautiful and so talented, you still, our beauty standards, or what's expected of us, or what does success look like, or, what is wealth, you know, um, versus poverty. It's like all of those things are, and the existential threat of AI and all of the other things, war and all of the horrible things that are going on in the world. But really, like, all the more reason why it's important to reflect on how lucky we are.
Yeah.
That's a good note to
So-
end off on.
I was going to ask one more question for you, just to end
Sure.
it. So if you could go back to the beginning of your career as an executive and strategist, would you do anything differently? And what advice would you give to yourself?
Oh, I definitely would have drank less alcohol.
That's great.
I would advise myself to really love myself more, especially in my youth, because aging sucks. And I think I would have, like, I didn't get to go to college. I think I have full FOMO. Like, I should, at some point, maybe when I'm retired, I would come audit classes.
Mhm.
There you go. Come back.
Yeah, I really, I would have loved to have gotten like a law degree, or, not that I need one. I've been successful in my life without one in this very unorthodox trajectory. But I do like learning. I loved political science in high school and history. And, I married a very smart man. And so I love, the intellectual realms, and, I'm a little bit of still just a, messy skate rat
Mhm.
on the inside,
Yeah.
pretending to be professional.
Thank you so
Love
much,
that.
Circe.
Yes.
I literally loved this conversation.
Yes,
It
we
was
had
incredible.
such good conversations
You're
with
inspiring.
you. You're so great.
Mhm.
Oh, thank you so much. You're gonna make me cry. This was really fun. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I'm sorry if I got too political in there. I don't know if you
No,
want to edit
It's
that out.
okay.
Don't worry, you're
Don't
good.
worry.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you had some great, I'm taking some advice from you.
Yeah,
I'm going to learn to be
same.
more direct, to stand up for myself, and think of the positives.
Well,
Exactly.
both of you, feel free to hit me up anytime. You guys have my email, and I would be happy to talk to you anytime. You need help, you need a referral, just come on over.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
And I will be reaching out to you later tonight for pictures and
Okay.
stuff. So just look out for that
Mhm.
email.
Okay.
Yeah. Once again, I'm Christina Laeta, joined by my co-host Isabel Elmore, and we are so grateful for you watching. And we are also super grateful for our amazing guest, Circe Wallace.
Yes, we appreciate our viewers for tuning in to this final episode of Sesh. It's been great to interact with you guys, but we want to thank everyone who has supported our crew throughout this semester, and also all of our crew, so we're going to shout them out. So first we have Drew Jones, who is our executive producer. And we have Burke Claudvetter, who is the director of Questions and Research.
Next, we have Carson Sacco, who is our talent and guest relations manager. We have Holland Shope, who is our audio engineer, and then we also have Bobby Brower, who is our video editor and associate producer.
Next, we have Louise Lynn, who does our amazing graphic design.
And then we have Genesis Galan, who works on our social media team.
Then we have, you know him, Jacob Travis, who is a host and production assistant.
Yay. And then, of course, we also have our amazing professor, Norb Garrett. He won't come behind the camera,
And
but
he's
round of
over there.
applause.
Turn it around. We're so grateful for him and for giving us this opportunity. So,
And, of course, Isabel Elmore, who's a co-host and our director of marketing.
and then the amazing Christina Laeto, who is in charge of our social media and obviously a co-host as well.
Yay.
So we're just so thankful, and they'll be back in the fall with the next Sesh.
They won't top us.
No,
So.
we're the OGs, but it's been great. Bye.